I was a crackhead. I started using whenever I was pretty young. I got into the streets really heavy. I started selling my body to make money. And then one day I just didn't have any money anymore and decided that I was going to rob a McDonald's. And that is kind of what set everything off for me.
You actually robbed a McDonald's?
I robbed a McDonald's.
So how'd that go?
I had a boyfriend, and I remember a couple of months prior, we were sick. We were with his brother, and his brother said, "Oh, the perfect crime would be robbing a fast food restaurant because you can just drive off." And I just kind of tucked that away. And then one day I was sick. I didn't have any money. My boyfriend was pissed off at me. And I thought, fuck it, I'm going to go rob McDonald's. So I took the license plate off of my car. It was snowing. It was January. I stuck snow on the front license plate. I went through the drive-through. I ordered a fruit and yogurt parfait, put on a ski mask, pulled out a gun, and told the girl to give me the money. So I got the money. I drove off, and I had no gas in my car. Obviously, I was a crackhead. So I went to a trap house that was in Chillicothe, Ohio. Got out in the trap, spent my money, and then they said, "The police are out there with your car." I had the mask and the gun in my car. So I was like, what am I going to do? They know where I am. It was like a hoarder house upstairs in the attic. So I hid under a bunch of trash. The police left. They couldn't find me. I stayed in the attic for, I think, 3 or 4 days. And then I decided to go turn myself in because I knew that I was going to end up dead. Jail was okay. I think jail is pretty rowdy compared to prison, honestly, because people have such short time. They just, they're still in bullshit. They're acting crazy. Jail scared me a little bit. It made me think, like, am I going to be able to survive this? Am I going to be able to do this? It was tough. But going into prison, it was a completely different experience from jail.
Did they put you in a special pod, or were you in there with everybody else?
I was in general population with everybody else. Chillicothe is a really small town in Ohio. They don't have any sort of like LGBTQ pod. They probably never had another queer inmate, honestly, so they didn't know what to do with me. But I felt like if I requested to go somewhere, the only place they could stick me was the hole. I'm not going to do that. The jail, it was okay. I had a lot of connections from the streets, honestly. So I knew a lot of people that were in jail. And I think that that helped me a lot. I think that if it would have been a town that I wasn't from, it definitely would have been rough for me. But it was okay. It didn't have a lot of issues. I think that I was so used to manipulating men on the streets. I tried to use that to my advantage in jail and in prison. So they shipped me off to prison, and you go to CRC, which is the sorting facility. And CRC is 24/1 lockdown. So you're locked down all the time. Nobody really saw me or knew what was going on. But when they shipped me to my parent institution, it was crazy. They put you on the bus. They took me to SCI. And as I was getting off the bus, we were going into the quartermaster. And the quartermaster said, "Oh, the new queen of the compound is here." And I was like, I don't know what he means. Like, what does that mean? So they give you your box. They strip you out. I'm doing all of the things. It's time to take your clothes off. So I take my clothes off. And all of the guys are like, "Oh my God, look, she has titties, what the fuck?" And he's like, okay, this is going to be a problem. So they started to send us to our housing unit. I was walking down the avenue. People were catcalling me. They were fighting over who was going to carry my box, but I couldn't tell, are they doing this because they're making fun of me, or are they doing this because they're actually like want it, like they really want it. So they sent me to my housing unit. The first unit I went to was F1, which was the biggest unit on the dorm. They send me up to F1, and immediately a group of guys come up to me and they're like, "Are you FIZZLE? Are you FIZZLE? What's up? Are you FIZZLE?" Because they had shaved my head in CRC. So I was bald headed. And the clothes are loose. I don't think that they could see everything that was going on underneath. I'm like, what's a fizzle? I don't know. I've never heard that before. They're like, are you a fag? Do you fuck around? I was like, yeah. They said, okay. They walked away. And then it was time to go to chow. So I decided not to go to chow. I was nervous. I sat on my rack and a group of girls came up to me. They were talking to me, asking me a bunch of questions. And that's what my first day looked like. It never became anything more than that until later down the road. Like I never had any issues until I'd been in prison for a couple of years.
Did you have a cellie?
I did. Yeah, I did. He was a big Samoan guy. Um, he would always try to tell me, teach me the ropes, tell me all the things to do. He was pretty young. He was a little older than me. I would say that I was 20 at the time. He was probably like 35. He tried to teach me the ropes, tell me what I should do and what I shouldn't do. But it was always really strange. I could tell that he was uncomfortable having me in the cell. But he didn't know what to do about it, and I didn't know what to do about it either. He was just a civilian. The prison that I was in was so small, and so whenever I went to prison, CRC was the only prison I was in, the sorting facility that had cells. After that, we were in open dorms. So I think that probably helped a lot because what are you going to do? Everybody's in an open dorm. You're just living with everybody.
Yeah. The gangs weren't that bad out there. There wasn't a lot of
They
stabbings and stuff.
There definitely were. They were crazy. But there were a lot of like small local gangs too. They had like KFs, they had triple R's. And I always felt like they probably didn't follow their bylaws the way that they should have, or the way that I saw on the streets, I guess. I do think that the compound I was on, they got away with a lot of things that typically they wouldn't have.
Yeah. Did you ever have guys that were in gangs, like, trying to talk to you secretly?
Yeah, they used to call me the patch hunter. So I would have people from gangs come to me and offer me money to try to seduce or kick it with somebody that they thought was suspect.
Did you ever feel isolated?
I didn't. I always felt like I had a million eyes on me. I felt like no matter what I was doing, somebody was always watching me. If they weren't watching me because they were trying to sneak around, then they were watching me because they wanted to catch me up doing something so that they could kite me out.
Did you ever get into any physical altercations?
Of course, yeah.
You want to tell us about it?
Yeah. The first fight I ever got in, there was a guy who was interested in me. He slept over the wall from me. So whenever we would go to sleep, we were both on the top rack. We could see each other. And he would always pass me notes in the middle of the night trying to holler at me, but I was never interested in him. He just wasn't somebody that I felt comfortable around. And he started to really get in his feelings because I wouldn't pay any attention to him. So he sent two guys to jump me out on the yard. And that was the first fight that I got in. I think that because I was so fucked up on drugs on the streets, I never let anybody pay attention to me because I was too focused on getting dope. So whenever I got to prison and I realized like there's nobody like me here, these people are paying mad attention to me, I started to play a lot of games with them. So I would have them fight each other, or I would have them go in the showers and fuck around with each other and tell them like, whoever performs the best, you're going to be my boyfriend. It was just like one big mind fuck for them.
Did you get a lot of inmates that like gave you hate just for being who you were?
Of course, I think that in prison, you have so many different groups of people, and everybody wants to prove something. Nobody wants to show that they're weak. And a lot of times, people associate being queer or being trans with weakness. So it's easy to try to pick on somebody who you think is going to be weaker than you. And I definitely had people who just hated my existence. But I had a lot of men who loved my existence, and that stopped a lot of issues for me as well.
So you said that was your first fight. How many fights did you get into while you were in there?
I didn't get in a ton of fights. I would say probably 5 or 6 fights. A lot, most of the time it would be with a boyfriend of mine. Just like Jerry Springer shit.
So how was your your dating life while locked up? I know you said you had guys. Did you have somebody like special that you
I,
spent most time with?
I did. I had somebody that I spent 4 years with. I always tell people on my channel it's crazy. Like, I had never been in love until I went to prison, and I definitely didn't expect that to happen in prison. But I did have a guy that I spent 4 years with, and it was like being a normal couple on the streets almost. Prison is its own little environment. You have the movies at the chapel, or you go take a walk in the yard. And in those moments with him, I always felt really normal. And after I got out of prison, I actually ended up legally marrying him.
So what's the craziest thing you've seen while you were in there? It doesn't have to do with you. It can the craziest thing you've seen, witnessed.
Um, so towards the end of my sentence, Tunchi started to get really big in my compounds, and it would just make people act crazy. There was a guy, this light skinned guy, I'll never forget it. He had been smoking Tunchi, and it was New Year's Eve. So he was just acting crazy. He was jumping on racks, he was taking his clothes off, and he had taken his clothes off and he was chasing another guy, just fucking around with him. And the guy got pissed off, told him to stop. He just kind of kept picking at him, I guess. So at count, the guy that he had pissed off went into the day room and took the microwave plate out of the microwave, smashed it, took the glass, and stabbed him up. He ended up making it. Yeah, he made it.
Did you actually see anybody that didn't make it?
For sure. Yeah, of course. I pretty early on into my sentence, I think I'd only been in my parent institution for maybe 3 months. There was a group of boys that stole some Suboxone from somebody, and the guy found out who one of the little boys was, and he killed him.
A lot of drugs in there, contraband, and on the outside, you were messing with that stuff. Is that something you tried while you were in there?
I actually stayed sober while I was in prison. I had already detoxed pretty hard going through the reception center. It was definitely a challenge, but there was nothing in there that I did. I smoked crack and I did heroin, and that was really all that I messed with on the streets. I never saw any of that in prison or any of that I would have trusted, so I just never got into it.
Yeah. Do you think prison helped you? It slowed you down?
I think it saved my life for sure. I definitely think that the prison system has a lot of work to do. There isn't a ton of rehabilitation. You have people who are adult babysitters, and the police like to really just fuck with people to make themselves feel better. But if I had not gone to prison, I would be dead. I know that I would be dead.
Yeah, you gotta wanna, change for yourself. But being in a place like that, it will make you want to change.
For
Definitely.
sure.
Now, what about the COs? How did they treat you?
The Theos were fine. Anytime I had an issue with a CO, it was always a woman. It was never a male CO. I had a lot of female COs that really tried to fuck with me. But the male COs, they were great. I would almost say that they babied me.
Do you think people get addicted worse inside of prison than outside?
For sure. I saw a lot of people, especially on the subs, get super fucked up inside. I would say worse than on the outside for sure.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people. They'll call home and they'll just be calling their people all day for money,
All right. Yeah.
and they'll tell them it's for food bags or I need a
Anything.
TV, anything. But in all actuality, they're just you know buying drugs. What's something that the prison movies and TV shows get wrong?
I think that the biggest thing that they get wrong is whenever you see a trans woman in a men's prison in TV shows, that she's always a victim. She's always having the worst time of her life. And I think that for a lot of people, that probably is true, but it's not true for everybody. I saw people who identified as LGBTQ after they went to prison, like they were pressure punks that had a rough time. But I saw other people who came into prison just the way they were. And I think that people kind of respected that, or they knew that this isn't just some survival tactic. So it was kind of like live and let live.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it didn't sound like you were a victim in there. It sounded like you were kind of running
No,
stuff.
it was, I don't want to say that I had a good time because I don't ever want somebody to think that prison is easy or it's not scary or crazy shit doesn't happen. But I definitely felt like there are times even now whenever I'm like, damn, I miss prison because I had so many people who wanted to do everything for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, you got a lot of guys in there that's never going to get to see an actual woman. You
For
know,
sure.
you want to go ahead and walk us through like a normal day, like what you would do normally?
Yeah, I would wake up. They would call breakfast. I never would go to chow for breakfast. I honestly never went to the chow hall because I had the boys that would cook for me. I would wake up, I would decide which man I was going to run around with that day, and I would typically go grab him. We would go in the shower together while everybody was at chow, fuck around. After that, we would get ready. They would typically call first rec. We would just go walk the yard, talk, and then that was just kind of like a repeating cycle. There isn't a ton to do in prison. I was on a softball team at one point for a little while, so I played softball whenever I was there. And then the last 3 years that I was in prison, I went to college, so that took up a lot of my time. But that's the thing with prison, it's so routine, nothing really changes. It's like wake up for me, wake up, have somebody cook for you, fuck around with them, go walk the yard, go to school, go to sleep. And that was just the day.
At what point did you get to the point where you're like, I want to change my life, and I don't want to go back to the how I came in here?
I think that before I even made it to jail, whenever I robbed a McDonald's, there was something in me that made me realize I really need to change or I wouldn't have turned myself in. But after that, going through CRC and being in prison, I would say probably 4 or 5 months, I really started to think about what am I going to do? I'm going to be so far behind everybody when I get out. I've done all of this fucked up shit. Who's going to give me a job? And that's whenever I realized I need to decide how I'm going to change my life and how I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, even I felt like that. When you like even getting out, you feel like you don't wasted so much time in there. Everybody's been living their life out here. You feel like you're
Yeah,
playing catch up. You
for
know,
sure.
and that's one thing I was thinking. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know anything.
Yeah.
You got any more crazy stories that you can remember, or that was about it?
Yeah, I mean, I have a ton of crazy stories. That's what I've built my platform off of is just sharing my stories. I think that, oh, let me think of a good one for you guys. Okay. I know that we talked a little bit about the correction officer. So one thing that I had happen pretty frequently would be knocking a CO. And I think that that was something else that kind of made the men who maybe didn't like me so much feel a little better with having me there. There was a officer, he had only worked at the compound for, I think, 4 months. And he walked back on the shower and caught me fucking around with somebody. And I was thinking like, oh shit, he's gonna lock me up. But instead he just stood there and watched. So I was like, okay, I see what he's on. And I started to, whenever I would walk past him or I would see him, just flirt with him a little bit to kind of push the boundaries and see what he would do. He started flirting back. So then I would start asking him for little things like, can you bring me a pack of cigarettes? Can you bring me some Chinese food? And every time he would bring it. So that went on for like 2 or 3 years. And then one day they locked him up, or they took him out, they locked him out. And I thought that it was because there was going to be a PREA case on me and him, like somebody had told on us or something. So I was flipping the fuck out. I was calling everybody at home. I was having people take all of my stuff because I thought they were going to ride me out. And they never came to get me. So I was thinking that's so strange because everybody talks in prison, and they were saying that he had been caught fucking around with somebody. So I was super stressed out. And a couple of days later, I found out that he was fucking around with somebody else and they got caught. So that was definitely pretty crazy because we were both messing around with the same CO and both. I don't know if anybody that's watching knows, but you can't consent to sexual activity in prison as an inmate because you're a ward of the state. So even as an adult, if a correction officer is caught with an inmate, then it's PREA, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. It's a charge for them, and it's typically a charge for you, and you're being wrote out. And that was a really scary moment for me because I thought I was busted, but it ended up being somebody else.
Yeah, that is crazy. I never imagined that would happen.
Yeah.
What was your day of release like?
So I got out during COVID and we were doing quarantining. So you had to quarantine for 14 days prior to your release, and they would take you to the basement of the school. They had little areas set up. So I had been in there for 14 days, and then they called me to go out. You sign all of your paperwork. They put you in the sweatsuit. Ours was ugly green. And my mom came to pick me up. I got in her car and we drove down the road. I got car sick because I hadn't been in a car for so long. And I needed to stop somewhere to get a phone. So we stopped at a Boost Mobile, and I was so scared to go in or be out in public. I remember just shaking and sweating because it was so overwhelming to be able to go in somewhere and do what you wanted or to see other people. And then whenever you do go in, you have people standing behind you or beside you, and they're so close to you, and you're not used to that. It kind of flips you out. So that was a hard adjustment. And I'll never forget the first day I went home trying to go to sleep in my bedroom, and it was so quiet and it was so dark. And I was used to having hundreds of other men all along beside me, running around, doing whatever they were doing. I couldn't sleep for the first 5 days I got out. It was too quiet and it was too overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, when you get released, it almost feels like you're being reborn again. It doesn't even
Yeah,
feel real. And that hit me pretty hard when you said that, people it I forgot how you said it, but you like it almost felt like you shouldn't be out. At any moment,
yeah,
it felt like, the CEO's gonna pop around the corner and be like, "Where you
yeah,
going?" That's what I felt like too. I ain't gonna lie. I
yeah,
felt like that too. I was like, "Come on, let's get the hell out of here." What are
yeah. It
some of
was
the
tough.
did you take any positive things home with you?
For sure. I earned a degree while I was in college in prison. So that was definitely something that helped me change my life. But I also think that being in prison made me more vocal about what I want in life, and I guess more vocal about things that I care about. It made me definitely resilient, and it taught me that no matter what situation I'm going through, I can overcome it. But I think it also taught me to be less judgmental with people. Like, just because somebody is going through something or they're fucked up right now doesn't mean that they're going to be forever. that was probably the biggest thing that I took from it. You never know what somebody is going to end up being in a month or 2 months or 3 months, so you just need to respect them.
Yeah, people can change, and I feel like prison, it helps people for the best. It will slow you down if you're going too fast out there. If you're on drugs too bad, it's going to give you a chance to be without them, get you a better
For sure.
person. Now, did you take any negatives with you?
Yeah, I think that mentally, even though I would say I had a relatively good time in prison, mentally, prison fucks you up. Like, there's definitely a PTSD aspect that has been brought home for sure. I've been out of prison now longer than I was in, but even hearing somebody jingle their keys will always kind of make you snap your neck and it just takes you back. And I definitely think that I'm a lot shorter tempered than I used to be. I'm a lot faster to turn up on somebody or feel disrespected than I used to be prior to prison.
Yeah, I can see that. It teaches you about respect. Everybody in there, they know about respect, and you come out here to the outside world, and everybody doesn't have that. And your first instinct in there is when somebody disrespects you, is to handle it.
Yeah,
But you
you
can't
have
do that out
to.
here. You can't.
Mhm.
It's crazy. What would you tell your younger self before you went to prison, or
I think
somebody
that,
going through it? Somebody living wild out there right now, like you
yeah,
were.
I think I would say, like, in the moment, it feels like you're stuck. And I felt that for a long time too. But you really can get out of the life of crime or addiction. You just have to try. And I used to hate it whenever people would say, you just have to let them hit rock bottom. You have to let them hit rock bottom. They're not at the bottom yet. They think they're at the bottom, but they're not at the bottom. I would say that's true. You really have to hit your rock bottom. And I just hope for whoever is out there struggling that your rock bottom doesn't send you to prison or you end up dead before you have a chance to change.
Yeah, that's for sure. Prison's not a bad place. It's really not. It can be sometimes. It can teach you some stuff. I mean, if it's short term, but if you're in there for like years and years and years, it can be horrible. You get extorted and all that. But
Yeah.
what are some of your goals now?
I My biggest goal when I got out of prison was to open a salon. Prior to going to prison, I was a licensed cosmetologist. And I opened a salon within my first year of being out. That was the biggest accomplishment to me personally. I think now my goals are to just keep sharing my story on my platform, and I just want to help people. I want to, no matter what you're going through in life, I want you to know that it's going to be okay. And like, please learn from my mistakes and let's see what we can do to get you on the right path. So I would like to eventually have some sort of halfway house or sober living home.
Yeah. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't do YouTube, just TikTok.
You want to give people your TikTok so they can follow you if they want to?
Yeah. TikTok is Case the Doll.
Okay, I'll put it in the description too, in case
Yeah.
anybody wants to, follow you. Is there anything you want the viewers to understand after hearing your story?
I think that I'm assuming that your viewers probably think a lot of the same thing that my viewers do. And I know for me, a big thing that I get is that it's unbelievable to think that somebody like me would have had very minimal issues in prison. And that's a stigma that I really try to break. I think that it's important for people watching to know that the kindest, most open minded people that I met were in prison. you're stuck with people for so long, so many years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you have to make a choice to either fight over petty shit or to just live and do your time and try to avoid catching more time and try to get out. And I've noticed that in prison, people seem to 9 times out of 10 make the correct choice where people on the streets don't.
Yeah, probably because they have a lot more time to think about it. They actually can sit in
For
their
sure.
cell or open pod, and they're sitting there. They can actually sit there and think about something.
For sure.
Yeah,
And I
but
do see a lot of people asking about my mouth, so it sounds like they wanna know about that. Nothing happened, I didn't have a stroke, I didn't get my ass beat. My biological mom was a drug addict, and this is just the way my mouth is. There's no story for that.
okay, so it's from her abusing drugs.
For sure.
That's another reason not to do drugs because if you're pregnant,
Right.
it really can mess the baby up.
For sure.
I mean, my mom, she was on battle on drugs too, and growing up, it's harder for me to learn. I didn't even know how to talk until I was like 5 or 6. I had to go
Yeah,
to speech classes and all that. That's why sometimes I
drugs
stumble over my words.
definitely yeah, drugs definitely affect everybody around you, not just you. For
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. Yeah, I was hooked on Percocets real bad. I was doing other stuff, but Percocets were the main things. I was messing around with Molly and all that powder back in the day. But Percocets, I got into a car accident and I was like dependent on it. And going to prison, it like cut me off all that. And
Yeah,
that's one day I can think about it because if I want to go to prison, you know, to this day I know I still be doing it, abusing the hell out of it.
for
I
sure.
was a horrible person, you know. But I don't if you don't if you can learn from our mistakes, you shouldn't want to go because some people don't get to make it home. You might go to prison and get extorted, had the worst time in there, not even make it home. So,
That's true.
I just want to put the how it really is in there. I want to put it out so people don't have to go in there and experience it themselves.
Yeah, I think that my case was pretty different than how I anticipated going in, but I definitely saw people be extorted, get their ass beat, not be able to leave their cell, have to check in. That's a daily occurrence. And just because it didn't happen to me, it doesn't mean like if I were to go back, it wouldn't happen or it wouldn't happen to you. Prison definitely isn't a fun place. It's not a game. It's not a joke, and I think that
Yeah.
it is important for people to
Well,
know
that's the
that.
that's the thing about it. Anything can happen at any moment in there. That's the thing about it. At any moment. Like you actually feel like you're in a war zone. Well, you weren't into like the gangs and all that, so you probably didn't feel like that. But for somebody that's in an organization or messing around gangs, it's totally different in there. It's a war zone.
For sure.
Yeah. Did anybody actually get hurt? Like over you? I think you said that before, but
Yeah, so there were 2 guys that I was just playing around with way too much, and I remember one of the guys said, like, "You really need to stop fucking around with my head or somebody's gonna get hurt," and I thought that he was talking about me, but, he ended up taking a bedpost and beating the other guy pretty bad with it in the head, in the face. He busted his teeth out. It was pretty bad.
so was he jealous or something?
He was jealous. Yeah, he was jealous.
Dang. And did the other guy ask for it, or did he just do that just to like try to impress you, or
I think that he thought that it was going to scare me or he was going to get rid of the other guy and that would make me choose him or stop playing games with his head, I guess.
yeah, it's crazy. Is there anything else you can think of?
I don't think
I think that's
so.
about it.
All
I covered all
right,
the questions I
perfect.
wanted to ask.
Sounds
Yeah, I
good.
want to thank you for coming on. I want to on my channel. I want to bring every person that there is in prison, trans, gang members, white, black. I'm trying to bring everybody in for interviews, and I think you gave a pretty good interview. So if you want to follow her, on TikTok, I'm gonna put it in the description. And yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody else, thank y'all for coming. If y'all want to know, if y'all want to find her, she's on TikTok. And yeah, I think that's about it.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.